Okay, if you're an Iron Maiden fan, especially the early days, I think you're really going to enjoy this video. The day that we're recording this video is actually the day that we found out that Paul Di'Anno just passed away. And so I thought, you know what, we should make a video that talks about Iron Maiden, especially just find some reviews related to those early days of Iron Maiden. One of the things we do a lot here on this channel is we find old record reviews, concert reviews from back in the early days. And so I found a few things related to Iron Maiden right after their first album came out. And these all reference Paul Di'Anno. And I thought it'd be really interesting, especially if you're an Iron Maiden fan. You're going to find these really fascinating because these are all things, again, that were written back at the time. And what makes these interesting is that here we are, what is that, 45 years, almost 45 years after that came out. And then to know everything that happened in between and to hear how they were being talked to and what was going on back at the time. Anyway, I think these things are so fascinating. And so just to preface, I think me, like a lot of other people, we discovered Iron Maiden after Bruce Dickinson was already in the band. I was too young. I was just I was a kid when the first stuff came out, and I was barely getting into music when Number of the Beast came out. So when that came out, I saw the video for Run to the Hills. And so I immediately wanted to go get that album, which was Number of the Beast. And so I've told the story before about when I went and got that record and brought it home, and I just fell in love with that album. I thought it was so amazing. Just start to finish, everything on it was great. Loved it. And then, again, because I was very young, you go to the record store and you start looking and you go, oh, there's more Iron Maiden stuff that's actually older than this. And you realize there's a whole Iron Maiden that existed prior to Number of the Beast. Hey, hold on for just a second. We'll get right back to the video. But if you like this stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, with that, back to the video. And there was a whole nother singer, guy by the name of Paul Di'Anno. And so a friend of mine had the album Killers, and I remember he played for me the song Murders in the Rue Morgue. And I thought that was so amazing. It was so great. It once that song kicks in, it's just incredible. And that's on the album Killers. And then also the song Wrathchild, I believe is on Killers. And I heard both those, and those were just amazing. And then of course you go back to the first album, which was just called Iron Maiden. It has Running Free on it, and the song Phantom of the Opera, which became kind of a staple of theirs too. And then of course the song Iron Maiden is on that album too. But going back and listening to them after discovering Iron Maiden with Bruce Dickinson, going back and listening to that earlier Iron Maiden, of course, my judgment's off because I know them as Bruce Dickinson, but man, you go back and listen to that and you listen to Paul Di'Anno, especially on the Killers album, he is amazing. The way they recorded his voice, the way he performs in that album, there are people I know still, I don't personally know, but I know of them that still believe and still see Iron Maiden that as Paul Di'Anno's band. That he's the real voice of Iron Maiden. I just see these things posted every once in a while online because I follow this kind of stuff, and there are just people out there that still that was Iron Maiden, and it was just, and he was the real voice. And you can kind of see, if you can step back and look at it, you can kind of see that because there was a different attitude that was brought in with Bruce Dickinson, where he was much more, his voice was bigger and stronger and a little bit more like a Ronnie James Dio type, where Paul Di'Anno wasn't that way. It was rougher and it was more, I don't know, but you listen to that stuff on Killers and he was great. And you can see, even though Steve Harris was the brains behind the band and he was writing all this great music, Paul Di'Anno played a role in those guys getting where they were. He was really good. And he had that great stage presence, that black hair, and he'd wear that Judas Priest kind of leather looking thing, and the way he would just stand on the stage. It was just cool. This guy was cool. And that album Killers too, by the way, I used to think that Number of the Beast was the coolest album cover. Maybe, again, because I that's when I got introduced to him. But the more, I don't know, the Killers album cover, which is their second album, that I don't know that you can beat that. That is just it's so menacing and it's so just, man, it's just awesome. It captures the idea of Eddie so well. It's so great. Okay, so here's what I've got here. I've got 4 different little things, and a couple of them are they're all very, very short. They're little articles. 2 of them are record reviews, and a couple of them are a little more just talking to the band. One of them talks primarily to Paul Di'Anno. And if you're into Iron Maiden, again, you will love listening to this stuff. So anyway, this one, the first one is the Cambridge Evening News, Wednesday, July 9th, 1980. And so just, again, Iron Maiden, the first album, it came out in 1980. Killers, 1981, Number of the Beast, 1982. So this is first album. Okay, when Iron Maiden stopped blowing fuses with their very heavy metallics, the sound can be surprisingly poignant and classy. Lack of finesse helps an HM outfit, heavy metal outfit's what they're saying. But on that score, Iron Maiden are at a slight disadvantage. On their latest release, Strange World is captivating. So Strange World, by the way, is one of the songs on that first album. And it's kind of a slower song. And Paul Di'Anno, you can kind of, you get to hear what it's like listening to him singing kind of a softer, slower number. Let's see, you're stuck between 2 heavyweight numbers. It is out of character with the rest of the album. It shows a side of heavy metal, delicate layering and percussion behind strong vocals, which was more evident in its heyday. Iron Maiden are no slouches, and Paul Di'Anno's rusty voice is their trademark. It's an album to grow your hair to. And if this is any recommendation, probably one of the best among the current batch of heavy metal releases available. I love that line. It's an album to grow your hair to. That's great. And then it just, like it said there, Paul Di'Anno's rusty voice is their trademark. And at the time, that was really true. He just, and that's a great way to describe it. He had a rusty voice. And it was different than, is that what it said? Is that how it said it? Paul Di'Anno's rusty voice. Yeah, that's a great description. And it wasn't Bruce Dickinson. It had its own personality. It was so great. Okay, this one is from The Rocket, Saturday, November 1st, 1980, page 25. And it goes, this is, again, an album review. This is what you'd call uncompromising heavy metal music. Iron Maiden is a young British band, part of heavy metal's new wave that also includes Def Leppard. You'll notice they spelled it correct or wrong there. Leopard, that is. The album features a Scorpions-like sound. Dual lead guitars lead the attack. Singer Paul Di'Anno's Jagger-style vocals and the guitar playing of Dennis Stratton and Dave Murray. Isn't that interesting that they compare Paul Di'Anno to Mick Jagger? Dave Murray making this record a must for heavy metal fans. My favorite song is Prowler, a scorching rocker that makes Van Halen seem wimpy. No keyboards, horns, or overly sensitive passages on this record. But Iron Maiden is definitely on their way up. Okay, those are a couple of record reviews. Okay, now these, you're going to love these. This next article is called They Showed Their Mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E. And this is from the Grimsby Evening Telegraph, Saturday, April 12th, 1980. An alien culture to some, but sweet, sublime magic to its dedicated followers, heavy metal is becoming very much part of the modern music scene. A fast-rising group, Iron Maiden, came to Grimsby Central Hall, exhibited their wares, and were greeted with an ecstatic reception, which certainly assured them that the area has a discerning bunch of metal fans. Too often does mediocrity grab the acclaim on the airways, but mediocre is the very last description one could use of Iron Maiden. Their music, acerbic and raw, defiant and uncompromising, their lyrics taken straight from the vocabulary of today. They thundered out their message to all true heavy metal steeped believers within earshot, and believe you me, That was some distance. Comparative newcomers in the world of metal, the lads took on all corners, instrumental or vocal, a mix of both, and came out at the end in complete triumph. Last time here, now this is really interesting. Last time here, lead singer Paul Di'Anno had to back down with a set of ruptured blood vessels in his throat. After seeing and hearing him, the sole wonder is that his throat manages to stay the course for a single gig. And yeah, you go back, there's so many videos on YouTube where you can go watch Paul Di'Anno singing, and he is brutal. He is so, again, getting the way the other guy described it, rusty. You can hear that grittiness in his voice, and it was so great. And this person writing this saying it's hard to believe he can even make it through a night the way he sings. Everything he had went into delivery, and at the end of it all, he was as near exhaustion as possible, this side of complete oblivion. But the same could be said about the rest: Steve Harris, Dave Murray, Dennis Stratton, and Clive Burr. They were practically steaming after the first few numbers, wearing sweat as a kind of exotic body stocking and squandering a seemingly exhaustible seam of vitality and vibrant talent. I love this stuff. Artistically, and that word is used advisedly, Iron Maiden have a whole lot going for them. And in their particular field, a rich harvest awaits them. Volume, of course, is part and parcel of heavy music routine. They aren't falling behind in that respect, but so too is ability. And the group have a goodly quota of that, plus the knows to exploit it to the full. In a world which too often equates a youth and denim blend with something rather obscene, it was great to be a part of a 700-strong gathering of civilized young people soaking up the scene. And let's see here. I think that's kind of the end part of that article. Okay, now this next one, you're going to love this. This one actually spends a little bit of time talking to Paul Di'Anno. And again, these are all very short. Don't you find this fascinating? I love this, listening back. And another thing that's kind of interesting about these things related to Iron Maiden is they didn't have a lot of... They had fewer detractors than a lot of other people. They stood out as being actually really good. And even critics even seem to understand, at least the things that I found, that they were actually really, really good. There's a lot of times when we come in and do these videos where I'll find the pro and the con from a critical standpoint. It's harder to find that stuff for Iron Maiden because they seem to have that. There was just something about them that everybody really loved. And it's still true. I mean, as evidence of the fact that they can still tour and play arenas to this day, after whatever that is, 45 some odd years. Okay, On the Right Track. This is the last one I'll read. South Wales Argus, Saturday, February 9th, 1980, page 4. Despite their name, heavy metal band Iron Maiden aren't the sort of chaps you'd find playing at a Young Conservatives do. Quote, "My teacher said I'd go nowhere. I just want to turn around now and say, cop this then," lead singer Paul Di'Anno told Pop Shop. The five-man group, all from London's East End, appeared this week at Bristol's Romeo and Juliet Club during their UK tour, and on Friday, a heavy metal compilation LP called Metal for Mothers is being issued, including 2 Iron Maiden tracks. The band are due to record their first album before joining the Judas Priest tour of Britain in March. "We've built up a great following in the East End, and now we've started to pick up headbangers in other parts of the country," said 21-year-old Di'Anno. Bassist Steve Harris put together the first lineup of the group in 1977, at a time when everyone else was forming punk and new wave bands. "We had a lot of trouble trying to get dates at first, then heavy metal started up again, and we started getting a following. We're not in the big time yet, but by the end of the year, we hope to have England and Europe wrapped up nicely. Unlike other rock bands, we make a point of doing slow songs as well." Isn't that interesting? They reference that in the other article. But we're all like a big family. It's like having 4 brothers. Di'Anno foresees a lot of bands emerging from the East End in the next few years. "Where I live, they're all mods. There's a great mixture of bands. 14 and 15-year-olds are doing reggae and ska. 18 and 19-year-olds are doing punk, and the older ones are into rock. Anyway, and that's the end of the article. And it's so interesting. And there's Paul Di'Anno, who had several things to say in that article. But this is back in the early days. I mean, they were just barely getting moving. And this is getting that little snapshot, that little look into what it was like for them and how people were responding to them, especially in the broader public, because that's where the newspapers were. These are articles that aren't necessarily focused on, a music crowd, because it isn't in a music magazine. This is a newspaper. And it's fascinating to get that almost outsider's view and discussing these things with these people. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, especially, as we look back now. As I said, we were recording this today on the day that we find out that Paul Di'Anno passed away. Rest in peace. Just what an amazing, even though they got rid of him and they replaced him with Bruce Dickinson, he was such an important part of the trajectory of heavy metal. Being the first singer of Iron Maiden, being the guy that really helped put them on the map. All the guys in the band were talented. Of course, Steve Harris is, brilliant visionary, but the voice is so important. And he had that something about he and his presence, that frontman thing. At the time, in that band, for that music, he was perfect, in my opinion. You listen to that old stuff, especially the album Killers. The way they captured his voice was just spectacular, and you can really, really hear what made him so great. Hey, anyway, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Please like the video, follow the channel, and please, and if you have any other thoughts, if you had the opportunity to see them back then, I would love to hear about it. Please put that in the notes. We'd love to hear your feedback and what you thought of those, especially if you had the opportunity to experience what it was like being in those early concerts. All right, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.